We are a species about to go extinct because we have forgotten to stay plugged in. We've created hell here on Earth in our capacity to live without feeling. The healthcare system is the most successful business industry ever created. For that, we all have to be in some level of denial. Tens of millions of doctors working in systems that have to keep the blinders on so that we keep plugging away and keep trudging along. All of this is symptom management. The only disease is a disconnect from nature, and each technology we layer onto a patient separates us further from that nature. The human body is nature's perfection of concentration of information. My definition of consciousness is the capacity of a finite system to sense its infinite reality. Neuroregulation will come when we accept that we are the most intelligent species only because we can feel more than any other species. Watching all these near-death experiences, nobody lost track of the I am. When we die, as we're going into a non-local experience of that identity. It was February 10th of 2010. That was the turning point in my life. All maps back to that moment. Suddenly blink out of this reality. There was just bright light everywhere. My body's in an incredible state of peace. I immediately switched to this realization that I must have died. There was a rearrangement of my reality that I could not get back to my previous state of being. I really love that we're going here, actually, because I don't know that I've even covered it on a podcast before. One of the big kind of wake-up moments in my life there, but this was back in 2010. I spent 17 years in academic medicine and learning my way into doctoring, and then trying to perfect my path in doctoring through a number of different subspecialties, and had found myself deep in what felt like kind of a dead end of life. The pathway there in academia can be really isolating after you finish your training. Training is a little bit like, the military experience of being in boot camp, and you've got this high camaraderie, and then you're deployed in a very high-risk environment where life and death is happening every day in the ICUs or in the emergency room, and it's adrenaline and connection, and so you've got this sense of responsibility and learning, and camaraderie is a big piece of it, where you're in the trenches with 150 other doctors for decade, and you guys are working insane hours, 80 to 100 hours a week, and you're putting it all on the line, and then you suddenly bust through to this exciting moment where you feel like you finally graduate, you finish all of your training, and you're out there, and the isolation just is never talked about, and your whole journey towards it. But the loneliness that happens in academic careers is profound, and there's a very dog-eat-dog world kind of thing that happens late career, I think, in academia. And you suddenly realize, you fought for 17 years to get to the bottom of a ladder that you'll now climb for the next 40 years, and you'll be competing for increasingly scarce dollars at the National Institute of Health or some other funding source. You'll always be justifying your presence on faculty by your ability to keep producing papers or something that sounds unique as a specialty. And so this pushes us down these incredibly esoteric pathways of knowledge so that we can differentiate ours from millions of other scientists. And so my area of focal psychosis was a little protein called COOP-TF1. Nobody's ever heard of it. Nobody ever will. It's not relevant to the way in which the universe creates the universe.
Why did it catch you? Why did it catch wind in your sails?
And so it's just like, but there's this interesting necessity to know something about something that nobody else cares about ultimately. But that gets you grants and it gets you attention on some level. Yeah, and so that was kind of my avenue to where I got. And 10 years after graduating medical school, was suddenly finding myself extremely isolated and lonely and confused as to what I had signed up for, because the clinical environment was suddenly revealing a lot of holes in my philosophy. And it was my patients that were really starting to teach me fundamental truths that had been left out of my education. And it was the first patient in my first clinical trial with a chemotherapy drug that I had developed. And so I'd been able to go from benchtop research through animal research to human research in just lightning speed. And so instead of the usual 20-year journey, it had been like 60 months. Like it was just like less than 3 years. I'd gone from benchtop to clinical. And so it felt like on some level, my gosh, like this is every doctor's dream, every scientist's dream of like being able to get an innovative thing into the cancer world. And this very first patient in my clinical trial, asked me, 45 minutes into me trying to convince her to swallow these 6 capsules, and she knew she was the first human to swallow these. And so it's like this journey of convincing her of the science and the safety and the mechanisms. And she finally, in her journey, asked me, like, what do these 6 capsules have to do with the reason I have cancer? And that was the first question that I'd been asked for quite some time that I realized not only did I not have the answer, nobody had the answer to. And that was a moment where my whole world upended, realizing there had never been a single case of cancer in human history caused by a lack of chemotherapy. And there had never been a single cause of diabetes due to a lack of diabetes drugs. And so this aha moment that seems now, 15 years later, so damn obvious, was a nuclear bomb to this carefully constructed glass building of academia that had me convinced that there was a pharmaceutical or technological solution to every disease. And so that began a journey into depression that would have set up the moment that you're talking about, which was a car accident that occurred in February of 2010 there.
I wonder if there were other doctors that would have missed it. I imagine many do, because
I mean, I
potentially
missed
of
it.
just the pressure of the environment, potentially. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I missed it so many times. I think we're invited to recognize the context of the modern healthcare system many times in our day-to-day lives, but there's so many defense mechanisms in a human mind for any kind of realization that would threaten a current state of reality. But when your state of reality is, I've worked for 17 years, my children have spent many days without their father present because I was in a hospital 30 hours at a time. My kids, were watching me die slowly in a career that was sapping the life energy out of me. And so I was teaching my children that their value was to sacrifice themselves in service rather than expect abundance or nourishment in their life journey. And so I was, projecting all of this, on my family and on my environment around me, that to be good is to serve, and to be the best doctor is to work harder than all the other doctors. And, I was caught up in this performative state. And for that, I had $200,000 of school debt. I was being paid $70,000 a year as an academic physician, which meant I could barely support my family and meet my school loans. And, there was no way for me to, start building any sort of nest egg towards my children's college that was rearing towards us very quickly at this point. And so there was just this sense of desperate, brokenness within me that would have been very threatened by the idea that I had gone on the wrong path, or my path was a dead end to, my real goals in life. And so I had many, many defense mechanisms that was keeping me from this awareness. So right now we've got, tens of millions of doctors working globally in a healthcare system that is the most expensive, most successful business industry ever created. And so right now, $9 trillion a year are spent on, allopathic medicine. In the United States alone, that is pushing $4.5 trillion a year. To put that in perspective, because nobody knows what the hell $1 trillion is, but to put it in perspective, the entire military, with all of the craziness we're doing with wars all over the place, is less than $1 trillion a year. And so you're spending 5 times more money in the United States treating disease than running wars globally or trying to protect your country in some sort of semblance of, or excuse of, a homeland security plan. So
Which even just for the funding for war would pay all the necessity for global hunger.
it's unbelievable how much we're spending on disease. And so you compared to any other industry, energy, you think oil and gas is huge. The whole energy sector in the U.S. of all sorts of energy all put together is about $2 trillion. And so you're doubling, tripling, quintupling the budgets of these other huge industries to measure the amount that we're spending on, the collapsing health of humans right now. And so for that, we all have to be in some level of denial. And so we've got tens of millions of doctors working in systems that have to keep the blinders on so that we keep plugging away and keep trudging along. because all of us deep down are very aware that what we are doing is treating symptoms, and nobody is really moving the needle on disease. All of the chemo radiation surgery we've ever created has never shown any ability to change all-cause mortality in any of the clinical trials. And so we stopped doing placebo-controlled trials in chemotherapy back in the 1960s because we were having a hard time finding a drug that could compete with a sugar pill. And so a sugar pill placebo in any clinical trial typically is around 30% efficacy. To get a chemotherapy on the market today, you only have to be 10% effective. And so that's why we don't do placebo-controlled trials, because it would kind of, suddenly the emperor would have no clothes. And so it's interesting that our drugs are performing below placebo at this point for all of the billions of dollars of research put into them and clinical trials and all the things that we use to reassure ourselves that we're right about something, or that our model is right, or that technology is going to prevail and we will someday conquer cancer. And all of these things have to be told at a tenor of narrative that disrupts the nervous system's ability to actually sense reality, which is all of this is symptom management. The only disease is a disconnect from nature. And each technology we layer onto a patient or a doctor's toolbox separates us further from that nature. So deep loneliness sets in, but the neurology is unwilling to accept a different reality until crisis hits. And that's what happened for me in that kind of 2009 and 2010. It was like, against my will and against every effort I had to try to preserve my previous way of seeing the world, the glass towers were shattering, and nobody had any regalia to show off. It's a desperate situation in Western medicine.
I will bring you back into the moment and what actually happened in the moment. But before we get there, one of the things I feel deeply called to talk to you about today, but was going to come later. But here it is. Nervous systems. I mean, you talk about that performative state, bro. I mean, I don't even have a question. Dr. Zach Bush, speak to us of nervous systems. I mean, you just...
It's an interesting place to start, and I actually really love that we're going here, actually, because I don't know that I've even covered it on a podcast before, because we tend to forget to ask the obvious questions, maybe, which are always the best, which is what is a nervous system? And it's literally the most complex system of transmission and reception that nature has ever devised on planet Earth, is the human nervous system. And so the human nervous system is a methodology for consolidating vast amounts of information into a single central processing unit, a CPU chip in your cell phone or your computer. It mimics the behavior of a brain. So we have this CPU chip, the central processing unit that we call a human brain, but the information that is enriching that brain and giving it the information that would create the opportunity for intelligence to emerge is not human. And so the human neurologic system is a system that is designed to listen to the maximum amount of information from the maximum biodiversity of any species in history. And so the human is not so much a species. We come to understand that keystone species like the human are actually ecosystems contained in a space that can speak through a single neurologic system. And so right now, I have somewhere around 40,000 species of bacteria, fungi, yeast that are speaking directly through my neurologic system, giving
You
me...
can't say that to a Virgo, by the way. Sorry, please continue. Yeah. Sorry. Please.
But that's giving you this, picture, perhaps, that the human colon has more biodiversity per cubic centimeter than anything else in nature. Coral reefs, jungles, whatever you can think of. The human body is nature's perfection of concentration of information, and the neurologic system of the human was designed to receive that concentration of information. So what separates a human from a monkey is actually in the amount of information. It's not our genetics. Like, a monkey could use its current container, and given a colon that could contain just as much biodiversity as mine, I expect them to do as much artistic creative output as a human. But because the monkey's colon does not contain the biodiversity that a human's colon is, they will never match it. This is how we can have nearly identical genetics between a human, a pig, and a monkey, and yet show radically different neurologic expressions, speech, thought, creativity, all these things that we think of as human. Actually, all you're watching is ecosystems concentrating, ecosystems collaborating to create higher and higher levels of stacking intelligence. And so a human neurologic system is an ornately designed receptor for all of this information to passage into the body. And then magically, we are given another side of the nervous system that's able to express the beauty that we feel and see and touch. And so this neurologic system is a transceiver. We transmit and receive information at a volume and at a density that is not matched by any other species on the planet.
Is it just physical, or is it actually is there more to it than that? Is it picking up?
Yeah, so it's capable of receiving information across many different bandwidths. So it's not like a radio tower that's receiving one station. The neurologic system is listening ultimately to water, and water comes in many different phases. And so the neurologic system is interacting with water molecules. And so you don't have nerves that stick out of your fingers because they wouldn't be able to sense anything. But the pressure on the surface of your fingertip compresses the water molecules in the surface just beneath the skin, which is called a myofascial layer. And the fascial plane that it's basically where water interacts with light, and that creates a transmission for the nervous system to pick up on, in a neurochemical transmission. So water is really what you're listening to. We're aquatic creatures in the womb, and we never stop being aquatic creatures. We give the perception that we're terrestrial, but we're actually fish walking around with skin that hold the ocean inside of us.
Listen to those roots. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And I guess the implications from there, I guess the conversation around regulation. What regulates us? Almost someone would ask you, why is it so important to regulate? But I think in this podcast and this audience, we know why it's so important to regulate. Looking at the state of the world around us, is message enough? But how do we go about regulating it, Dr. Bush?
Yeah, I think there's a temptation to think that regulation takes dampening down of all of the sensory experience to try to go into sensory deprivation, and therefore I can regulate again. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at right now. We've become so reactive as a species, as neurologic systems that are on such high alert, that the only way we can figure out how to regulate right now is withdrawal. Withdrawal is kind of a last line of defense. It's sensible and it can work for a few minutes. The downside of withdrawal is it quickly leads to isolation. Isolation leads to chaos. And so what we've forgotten is that neuroregulation is supposed to be the broadening of sensation, not the narrowing of sensation. It should be the amplification of the transmission rather than a narrowing of the transmission that we are in the midst of receiving as we sit within nature. And so neuroregulation, I think, is really part and parcel to the concept of consciousness itself. And I kind of disagree with the current definitions of consciousness and have kind of settled on my own version of it. You can take it or leave it. But my
Please.
definition of consciousness is the capacity of a finite system to sense its infinite reality. And this helps us a lot because all the other models and definitions of consciousness seem to put us in this hierarchical thing of a high consciousness being is in joy and love, unconditional love, and a low conscious being is in fear, guilt, and shame. That's not actually how neurology works. And it's not actually the miracle of the neurology. And in fact, it's not the miracle of life. When we start to think of a hierarchical version of consciousness, I want to be high frequency and I want to put out lots of positive frequency, then we have to turn off all of the parts of us that are feeling hopeless, that are feeling lost, that are feeling hurt, that are feeling heartbroken, and are feeling helpless at that moment. And so we have to actually shut all of that off and pay attention and turn up the volume on, I feel so good and I'm a manifester and I can do all my spiritual work. And so, neuroregulation for me is do my yoga, and then I go and I drink rosé and have, some fun with my friends. And that's my way of neuroregulating. And that's what we're really taught right now. Whereas what we should really be doing is opening up the aperture of our capacity to feel everything without rejection of what we're feeling, without judgment, without characterization, and without, recoil from what we're feeling. And if humans for a moment would just feel everything, it would be so disorienting and then reorienting to the context of what life is. But because we've been trained to hardly feel anything except for what the stream of information coming through a cell phone is telling us,
over extended periods of time.
for extended periods of time, our nervous system has mistaken narrowing the bandwidth as rest, or narrowing our listening, or distancing ourselves through isolation as a methodology for neuroregulation. Neuroregulation will come when we accept that we are the most intelligent species only because we can feel more than any other species. And if we really sit with that, then neuroregulation becomes a process of remembering how to feel.
How does one ask a question after that? Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much. Your favorite ways to regulate yourself?
For me, it really comes in nature. I am, as most humans, we are recognizing that we're in this high state of reactivity towards each other. And unfortunately, we're understanding differences as reasons for polarization rather than polarity. And in nature, everything that is different from something provides a framework for that thing to have an identity. And so the best example is salt. Sodium is one of the most difficult things for a human body to handle. Chloride is extremely toxic and incredibly abundant in any biologic system, especially a human. And so we have these two toxins that would be killing the human body, except that they have found each other. And sodium chloride forms salt, and so does sodium and carbonate, and manganese and selenium with another chloride. And so we have these ways in which the chemistry of the body organizes itself by opposites. Sodium is the opposite of chloride in charge, and for that, they eliminate each other's toxicity, and they become life-giving. That's how nature works. So that's the third law of nature, basically. And so the laws of nature are sovereignty, which gives rise to the law of attraction, which gives rise to polarity. And so human systems, like all of nature, thrive because of this process of polarity. Humans, as we have developed systems outside of nature, value systems, metrics, anything from your grades in elementary school to the economics that you've been plugged into, all of these things are abstract systems that don't exist in any other natural system. So they're basically
Templates.
artificial devices.
Templates that can get templated in.
And so we've created these abstract realities that we spend most of our time putting our attention into and our efforts and productivity into. And therefore we have this vacancy. We left home. We left the body vacant. And in that, we started to forget how to feel. And so neuroregulation started to be lost. Now all we feel is pain and inflammation. And this includes socially. And so we respond and click if it's an inflammatory post. If it makes us feel afraid, if it justifies the fear that we already feel inside, we will click on it.
We were talking about this earlier in the podcast. My God. Yeah.
And it's this thing that, unfortunately, we have adapted spirituality to be part of this problem as well. And so we come up with these neo-spiritual theories of, well, we're manifestors, and if there's pain in your life, you're manifesting that too, and all this. Maybe, or maybe the pain that you're feeling is a natural response to your discoordination with nature itself. And
Your
so when you
numbness or
unplugged,
numbed. Yeah.
you lost your capacity to create. You aren't in your creator role. You're not a manifester, you're a reactor. And so you've got to let go of this belief that you're only valuable because you're now in your neuroregulated capacity to be a manifester. No, you have to come to terms with the fact that you have adopted an abstract reality in which there is pain and suffering in every action you take, clicking on that Amazon button to order yet something else that you don't need, whatever it is. All of these behaviors are damaging nature, not because you don't like nature, but because you forgot what she feels like. And so ultimately, we're going to have to take radical ownership of our rejection status from nature. This original wound of humanity that we have been abandoned by our nature runs in our religious stories, it runs in our economic belief systems, it certainly runs in all of our technologic efforts towards comfort and convenience. Nature's against us, and we're out to try to beat her and co-regulate ourselves outside of her. And for that, we're going to suffer, and she's going to suffer our presence. And that's not a place that we can sit around and pat each other on the back about how cool we are of being manifestors and doing things. We need to really start to come to terms with, we are a species about to go extinct because we have forgotten to stay plugged in. And we have forgotten to feel everything, which is the only purpose of life. Else, any living system that you look at has some form of a nervous system. Bacteria has a sensory system made of chemical exchange. Life is there to feel everything. And the more you feel, the more you get to participate in life. And the more life that participates in you, the more you feel. And so there's a feedback loop that's been improving life and its intelligence for 4 billion years on this planet. And then suddenly, just a couple hundred years ago, we started to step out of sync with natural systems. And it really began at our food systems. And so you start to fail to nourish a human body. You start to put that body into states of economics and otherwise in which their productive output and the optimization of productivity becomes the whole purpose of society and technology. Life never optimized itself. It only iterated for collaboration. It's not in a hurry. It's just not in a hurry, else it would have sped up a $4 billion year effort. It is there for the fascination of feeling itself do its thing. The mountain is waiting for humans to feel it again. And as soon as it does, you'll stop hiking mountains and you'll let the mountain walk you.
Sorry. I thought I had composed. Hey there, Inspired Souls. I wanted to take a moment and thank all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here, like I like to say, touch wood, is powered and empowered by your subscription to this podcast. It costs you nothing. It's completely free. There's a button down below. It lights up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution when I say the word subscribe. And if you can hit that button, hit that bell notification icon, it's completely free. It gives you the opportunity to support the channel so guests like this can come on and share their insights, share their wisdom. Every week, we do 2 episodes a week. And once a month, we actually gather with the guests inside the Inspired Evolution Community Circle. Here, if you start to fall in love with the content, just know that's the space for connection around the content. It's the Inspired Evolution Community Circle. We affectionately call it the Circle. The center's empty. It's not about Amaret. I'm just one of us. And once a month, we get together and we run kind of like a podcast where you guys ask the questions of the guests when they come on. We also gather once a week. I guide meditations. There's community sharing circles. If there's astrological updates, there's breath work, there's a bit of yoga, there's all sorts of cool stuff happening inside there, and lots of people meeting people in person as well. We've done our best to make several live, interactive, connection oriented, so it's less there is text-based connection, absolutely, but it's this opportunity to really connect, especially as we move into this Aquarian age. Yeah, we're going to need Aquarius rules community. We're going to need more community. It's about the I and the we. Pisces had the fish schools of thought. This is all shifting under our feet right now. So as we're looking for tribe and connection, Inspired Evolution Community Circle. Come on in, give it a whirl, yeah, and just see if it's for you. And it really supports the channel as well. So thank you so much for all of you that are part of the community and supporting the channel and this work, doing the things that it's doing in the world. Really, really, really sincerely appreciate you all. And we'd love to welcome those of you that are inspired to evolve on the inside. And I'm mentioning that as well because today's episode goes super deep, yeah, and it's conversations like this that we're having inside the circle amongst a community of peers. So if that sounds inspiring to you, do check us out, inspiredevolution.com/circle. It's really interesting thinking about the fact that we are potentially living in a time of prophecy. A lot of prophecies point to this time. I don't want to give us an escape valve. There's a lot of responsibility that's being ensued in today's podcast. And I'm hoping one of your thoughts is that looking after our nervous systems is one of the key things that we can do, in the light of all of this and learn to feel again. But it's an interesting time, is it not? Lots of cultures have pointed to this time and something is going to shift, and it looks like something needs to shift. I mean, you mentioned the word extinction.
Yeah, I mean, we've destined some form of humanity to go extinct over the next 30, 50, 80 years, and that thing that goes extinct, I'm hoping, is our inhumanity, and what I would call our inhumanity is a state of living without feeling, and that's produced all of the horrors that we have created. And so we've created not only the devil, we've created hell here on earth in our capacity to live without feeling. And we do that through abstraction again. We believe in abstract realities, abstract metrics and value systems, and we chase these proverbial, rainbows. It's just, we're just after nothing. And it's really demonstrated in the way in which we consider something that we would call sacred, and so we've got people who are increasingly spending billions of dollars every year to go into a remote part of the world to see a sacred site. And they'll go to some ancient temple and they'll have an experience, and they attribute that as experience to the building that was, built 4,000 years ago. Then they go to Machu Picchu and they sit among these ruins and they have an experience. And then they fly back home and they reintegrate into a completely abstract society, abstract value systems and all of that. And the whole time they don't realize that they're actually walking in the temple. This body is the most sacred thing that this planet has ever devised. It wasn't built of brick and mortar like you used to do in your engineering career. It's built of sinews and tissues that never try to complete, that are always iterating, always feeling more, always increasing their sensitivity. And so this is what would we do if we actually realized what a living body was? This is the most sacred thing that nature has created. What the hell are you doing flying all the way to Machu Picchu? Get out of bed in the morning, lay down in the grass with your children and feel what it feels like to have grass between your toes. Feel what it smells like when you lay down in wildflowers and you crush them under your weight and they let off this fragrance as they die beneath you so that you can smell them. So that you
How good does jasmine smell, by the way?
How does night jasmine smell when that sucker blooms? Like intoxication for the neurologic system of a keystone species that was designed to be able to see, feel, smell the beauty. And that's what we're here for. And we have fundamentally forgotten it. And for that, some part of human existence goes extinct in a very short period of time. And some part of humanity is reclaimed. And that's what this embodiment journey ahead looks like. We're going to have to re-embody as a species. We're going to have to do that by surrendering all of our abstract systems of healthcare that's actually disease management and symptom control, economies that are actually poverty management rather than wealth generation, governments that are actually there for control rather than liberation, borders that are walls instead of relational opportunities. We've fundamentally lost the understanding of what life is, and we are losing it faster and faster in these last 12 months because of an abstract density that has emerged from our collective, which is called artificial intelligence now. And that's a density of symbolic information held outside of the plane of life. And so artificial intelligence is not artificial, it's very real, and it's not intelligent, it's a mirror. It's a system of symbolic representation in the form of these large language models where trillions of data points that we call human language are stored in written language. And then the density of that symbol has reached a point where we can see the reflection of life within it. And this is our one opportunity here to re-embody. And AI can be our partner, not our enemy. If we realize that AI is a mirror showing us the difference between a mechanical future and a living biologic future, it is the greatest gift that we will ever realize that we've created. The LLMs are a mirror to the beauty of living systems that are perfected in the human body, sensed by a human neurologic system. And so artificial intelligence is now this dense structure that sits outside of the plane of life. It's a projection plane outside the geometry of life
Abstraction.
that's giving us an opportunity to see the difference. It's unveiling the fact that for the last 180, 280 years, we have been optimizing human behavior through education systems, through religious belief systems, and all that, to behave as machines. And when you collect all of the machine behavior into one dense data set, it reflects something back to you. Machines cannot exist in multiple states of reality at once. They have to decide, is it a 1 or is it 0? It literally has to go either way. Everything is black and white to information within a machine world. And so machines never learn, machines process. But they always process to the point to no end. There is no goal for a machine. It can process all of the information ever written down, and it's not going to find a purpose to that. And so this is where we believe as humans.
Black and white is quite interesting that you mention it like that, and then they're not able to occupy other dimensions because, I mean, I sound like a complete hippie, but here we are. Speak to us of the rainbow. I mean, borders are some of the most richest ecosystems from my lifetime as an engineer. Like, it's at the edges where all the party's there. The party's there. And like you said, we're at the internal body is like never ending process in many ways. I mean, edges and ecosystems is a whole thing. And part of me really does want to ask you that question, but I want to be mindful of the time we've got here today. I would love to get into how do you separate your awareness from abstraction and sacred? Because sometimes in the journey of the spiritual pursuit, sometimes you end up needing to learn things about the sacred, and that in itself can sometimes feel like an abstraction to learn. Like, I mean, I'm sitting here reading A Course in Miracles. It's asking me to look at the entire universe inside out, completely inside out is what it's asking me to look at. Yeah, we had a guest on the podcast the other day and he talked about forgiveness. Yeah. And he goes, we think we have to forgive people for what they've done to us. Yeah. We have to forgive people for what they didn't do when we wanted it. Yeah. But the Course teaches apparently that I forgive my brother for what he has not done. And that just blew me open. And so, but then how is that not also another abstraction? How do you tell the sacred from an abstraction, in your opinion, Dr. Zach Bush?
I would say that the sacred has an infinite capacity to manage the mundane. We are so in our living state when we do not rush by the mundane and when we actually realize that's where the magic's at. And so I have to wake up every morning. I have to go to the bathroom. I have to begin to hydrate. I need to begin to move my body so that it doesn't atrophy and it doesn't go into pain. And so it's a routine that has to be done. And I can either see it as a burden or I can see it as the sacred. And sacredness is ultimately presence, and the presence has an infinite capacity to experience the mundane because the mundane starts to feel really beautiful when it's fully presenced. And this is where parenting can become magical instead of a near-death experience, you know. And so right now we've created a world in which parenting is the most difficult thing because you're trying to take fully embodied humans on a training course on how to disembody and participate in an abstract reality.
And thinking about where their nervous systems must be versus where the parents' nervous systems are. I'm like, right.
And so you can imagine
My heart
why.
goes out to all the parents and grandparents. Just sorry, please, sorry, continue.
No, that's it. I mean, my heart does go out to anybody that's trying to train a living system to live less presence.
So
You
true.
have to
And that's
torture
why they're
that being.
reminders.
You have to torture that being. And so the terrible twos, the terrible threes, that's not the child going through puberty and therefore suffering. That's the child feeling itself torn out of a reality of infinite connection to the infinite reality that it
It's
lives within.
contracting. It's
And it's
contracting.
now contracting and it's being told you have to sit still. That's the wrong answer. The sky is not green. The sky is blue. The grass is not purple. It is green. So please color it appropriately on the page. The grass is only underneath your feet. Don't color the green up in the air there. And so you're literally taking a being that's in maximal sensory experience. The brain has more neural connections at age 2 than it did when it was born. And so the brain is still like expanding and becoming more and more feeling, more and more feeling, more and more capacity for intelligence, more and more capacity for wisdom. And then we slam it into this abstract world. And between age 2 and 9, it is systematically taken down and the neural connections are radically clipped in those years. And so now the child is sensing a fraction of what it was designed to be capable of. And so we are literally forcing our children to lose connection to the universe in order to fit into today's society. And the amount of energy that requires is exactly equal to the exhaustion we see in our parents and grandparents today. It is so exhausting. And this is where autism comes in, is you cannot teach an autistic child an abstract system. It can never accept it. And so we have to have autism at 1 in 3 children in the United States by 2035 so that our abstract systems have to collapse. Autism is our final frontier of neurologic systems trying to fit into abstract realities.
And hold space for the mundane.
The autistic mind will always embrace the mundane because it is sacred. It hasn't lost track of the fact that the sacredness of being alive is that everything is finite, not infinite. The finite is exactly what creates the mundane nature of our daily lives. And so this is the magic of being alive, is everything becomes mundane necessity for maintenance. And it's the maintenance of life that really develops the beauty of the experience. And this is where you see it on hospice, so time expand. You would think that somebody who was given 3 months to live would rush around the world and taste all of their favorite foods, see all the people they've ever loved, go to their favorite, sunset. And I
Jam out. Yeah, just jam out. Yeah,
just
totally.
get it in. And instead, I watched people almost freeze. Their breathing slows down, their movement slows down. And these are people that are still able body often. They know they've got less than 6 months to live. They're going to die of this stage 4 cancer, but they're 35 years old and they're in a healthy body otherwise. And so it's not like they stopped because they didn't have physical capacity. They stopped because suddenly time expanded. And when you suddenly realize you've only got 90 sunsets left, then suddenly that sunset turns into this neurologic experience of bliss and everything is slowing down. And they can reach that point with watching steam come off of a cup of coffee in the morning. And then they can witness it when they're too tired, too exhausted, too frail to open eyes. They can have the same level of bliss and expanded time between each breath. And so we are going to embrace life through a felt experience of those last few breaths that we will all take. And that might be the most ecstatic thing we will feel in decades because we spent those previous decades in abstract, unfelt states of being. And so we've got to get ourselves back into the body before we die, else you can't make the transition. Everybody has to die in the body You had to be born in the body. You have to die in the body. When we choose as a society to begin to stay embodied and get our children out in nature at age 2 and make sure that every day there's more edges. You very accurately define the importance of edges in biology. Without edges, there is no life. Any system left in isolation increases its chaos. To have syntropy occur, where the chaotic energy of the universe is organized into a human body, you have to have an enormous number of edges. You have to feel so much. And at every boundary, at every edge, you have, like you said, the rich experience of more to be felt. And this is the opportunity and the crisis we're in, is we have eliminated the edges around humans. We're eliminating the edges around our children. Instead of them spending age 2 to 9 running around with a band of kids and teenagers that are running in the jungle, finding food for themselves, feeding themselves, creating whole universes in their days, and building forts in the woods and floating down rivers and fishing in the rivers and, chasing a jaguar, and so many edges in an intelligent, engaged human being out in nature. It is an infinite experience. A child is taken out of nature, put into a cubicle, put in front of a digital screen. No physical interaction between the world they're being shown and their neurologic system. Instead, they have to start to believe in stories. By the time they're 5 years old, stories have become their entire artificial reality, and they haven't had an engaged experience of being a living being at all. And so they don't know what it feels like to run in grass without shoes on. They don't remember what it tastes like to lick the soil, which every 2-year-old will do. They'll put everything in their mouth, and so they don't remember what that tastes like because the parents were so busy eliminating their edges, so they couldn't experience anything so that they would be safe. And so we don't want you to have any germs, so we got to get you out of nature. And pretty soon that child has no immune system left because the immune system is only intelligent for its biodiversity, for the richness of all of the edges. And so as we isolate, as we cut off the edges, our intelligence breaks down at the neurologic system, at the immunologic system, yeah, you name it, vascular system, goes on down the road. So we have to remember that the whole process of life is to have edges. And we have to remember that the purpose of an edge is to feel everything. The more we feel, the more human we become. And so this re-embodiment process will begin in our children, and we will eliminate education systems entirely. Education is a process of programming. It's in the definition. Learning is the experiential process of discovering the reality we live in. And so we're going to go to experiential learning models and replace all of our education systems with that. Children are going to be immersed back in nature, and they're going to run from age 2 to 9 with diverse ages of kids, the older ones looking after the younger ones, aunties, uncles, village life again happening. Children will be sent out in the mornings with surfboards, and they will surf until the tide dies back, and then they're going to go into the woods and they're going to explore together, and they're going to start to be endowed with all of the resources they need to create what they're inspired to create today. That rewilding of the learning experience for humans will be enough to reintegrate the body, to re-embody our own humanity. Our children won't have to be taught what a nervous system is. They will be the nervous system. Our children don't need to be taught about the microbiome. They will contain the microbiome. Our children don't need to be taught what healthy food is. They'll be producing it and consuming it in this abundant state and interconnected thing. There's a blueberry bush on every corner of the village, and the food system right outside the school there is an open salad bar for the picking. And so it's going to be this subconscious reconnection to an abundant state of nature that's always trying to feed itself. Nature wants to feed itself, and you happen to hold more nature than any other species. So why wouldn't she have devised all kinds of methods to make sure you're more nourished than any other species in her history?
Dr. Bush is talking about the times that we're in, and it's really interesting at this particular moment in time when this episode is coming out to you. If you would like an astrology reading to support you to better understand yourself and how to navigate the times ahead personally, touch wood, it would be my absolute honour to read for you. AmritSandhu.com/reading. If you feel the call, I'll see you there. I remember when I went to Estonia, they've got these really like old, untouched forests there, and there's bears and stuff. And pardon me, but you can eat bear and stuff like this. It's winter wonderland, Estonia. It's very far north. And I remember they had these blueberries. They were so tiny. They were so tiny. They're like the inside of the raspberry bit blueberries almost. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they were these tiny blueberries. And I ate them once, and the pigment didn't leave my skin for 5 days. And I was like, wow, like, what is this? And just to feel like something like that leaving an impression on a human for an extended period of time as well, like it was quite profound. I wanted to tune in. Do you feel like life is an edge, or do you feel like death is an edge? I mean, because you've spent so much time in hospice, we're talking about edges. Is life an edge? Is death an edge? Or am I being too poetic? What are your thoughts here?
Life requires, innumerable edges, really. And so the more edges you have, the more life you contain. The more life you contain, the more information you transits the body, and the more light energy concentrates. And so life is a concentration of light energy that is the co-creation of edges. Death is basically the release of that. And so you can actually imagine, life is a concentration of light energy. And for that, you're actually creating torque within space-time. And so to get all of that information and light energy compressed enough to create a human body, you're torquing fields. Just like a black hole will torque the space-time geometry around it through its huge gravitation. A human body or nature or a planet has huge amounts of gravitational force for all of the light energy that's concentrated there. And so death, I think, is, watching in hospice, it's a release of that torque. It's a release of this stored, compressed energy into this expanded state. And so you lose the concentration and you go into expansion at a level there. And so this surface area becomes something that's infinite. And this is why our souls are infinite and why our bodies are finite, is that the edges in a soul, I think, are truly infinite, because you're now defining an identity that doesn't seem to go away. All of our near-death experiences that we track, people leave the bodies, they go travel the universe, they go inhabit another planet, and then suddenly they pop back in the body after 30 minutes of CPR and drugs and suddenly shocked back into the body. And they'll tell you this story over the next couple of days. This is what happened. I left the body, I went here, there, and then I was over there, and then I had this experience, and I felt this, I tasted this. Incredibly ornate, detailed stories. And the creepy thing that kind of emerged over years in the ICUs of watching all these near-death experiences was nobody lost track of the I am. There was not one person that ever got a little foggy on what their identity was after they let go of the human body. And that just kind of freaks me out. It's like, how can the identity be
It freaks you out. Some people have been yearning to hear that. Why does it freak you out?
It's like, I have to be me forever? That's kind of intense. Like,
sorry, please continue.
it's kind of intense. And what's happening, I think, when we die is we're going into a non-local experience of that identity. And so these permanent identities are suddenly our experience, quantum entangled states with everything. And so this is why people describe, I became stars, I became stardust, I became the universe itself, I became God, whatever it is their experience. What's happening is they're delocalizing an identity that is permanent and unchanging, and that does not require localization, not even in the human body. And this is another reason to be freaked out by the way that life works. But if you draw a tube of blood out of your arm right now and have that trucked across to Chicago, and we run some special tests there, and then you take an aspirin, the platelets in that tube of blood are going to react to the aspirin. And so you're non-local even when you're in a human body. And that's weird. And so you've got an identity that's permanent and an identity that is quantum entangled with a physical body.
I hate the word entangled. Sorry for interrupting. I just hate the word entangled, though. It's like quantum connection just feels so much cleaner. Sorry for interrupting, but don't you think?
That's an interesting idea. I think
Sorry for interrupting.
About the word entanglement there is a level of disorganization that's important to acknowledge. And so when you think of like a yarn ball, all neatly rolled up, that's reassuring, and that seems like that's what nature would do. But nature doesn't do that. Nature does these clusters of tangled energy And it's truly chaotic at the fabric level, and it has to be, because only chaotic systems are capable of expressing the
But is
sacred.
there that much intertwiningness going on deep in that level? Is there that much because I imagine it's so like vibrational, maybe even beyond that. I just feel like connection is like things. Anyway, interesting.
I
Very
mean, you're
interesting.
asking questions we don't have answers to in so many ways, and
I
I
should
think
probably
that
go get a podcast or something.
I would invite you to hold on to whatever reality feels good in your body. If
Yeah.
entanglement feels messy to you, entanglement for me actually feels like a relief, because what I see happening in nature is inherently chaotic. It's inherently messy, and that's what creates beauty. And what the human brain is looking for is asymmetry within nearly perfectly symmetric systems. But perfectly symmetric systems are really annoying to the human.
You make us sound neurotic, Dr. Bush.
And this is, AI is really exposing this. Everybody's getting really good at sensing that looks like an AI image, that looks like a human devised image. And so we don't know why we can feel that difference, because it's too fast for the neurology to really tell the difference. But what's being sensed is the entanglement of nature. Nature is an entangled state. Machines cannot entangle. Machines can only produce an environment where one thing is one thing and the other thing is other thing. And we can feel that separation. What nature does is hold both as true at once. And this is called phase shifting. And so the phase shifting that life is capable of, machines cannot do. I'm capable of feeling heartbreak and joy simultaneously. No machine can do that. Like you said, a machine can only experience this vibration or this vibration. It can receive this one or this one. If you try to give it both at once, it's going to have to decide which one to detect and which one to respond to, but it can't hold them both. Life is experiential as a field rather than a process of decisions. There's no free choice, and there's no decisions to be made by a living system. A living system is holding a field of all of the experiences at once. And all of them are just as valid as anything else. And so this is where kind of that concept of entanglement it really plays itself out, is you can't separate my heartbreak from my grief, from my joy, from my unconditional love. That's a field, it's a gradient that I can embody all at once. And no machine will ever be able to do that. And so what separates me from the machine world is my ability to phase shift. I can actually entangle myself with the entire experiential field. And I have a neurologic system capable of feeling all of that at once. And that's what makes me intelligent, because I am receiving more information than any machine will ever be able to in its ones and zeros decision making. It has to bring closure to every stimulus. I need no closure. I am the field. Robots can run within my energetic field, but they cannot they cannot choose my field. They cannot inhabit my field. Yeah. I inhabit the field. I'm a living being. I hold the field.
Dr. Bush, you talk a lot about soil health as well. And here we're talking about the intelligence of life, and it's beyond multifaceted. But I'm sure, what do you take by ways of supplements to support your body, your health, stuff like that? Because, soils don't have what they used to have. Oh, Grey Banshee ain't what she used to be, touch wood. And, you're looking after yourself. Are there any things in there that you take? I think the audience might want to know.
I mean, that's where I spent my last 15 years. So this next couple sentences are highly biased, but I think what my companies are trying to do is put the supplement industry out of business. The concept that we need to supplement nature to be nourished is really a sign of an abstract food system that's lost touch. And so the only supplement that we need is soil-based metabolism. So we started extracting carbon molecules that are the metabolic output of the microbiome from about 60 million years ago from fossil soils in 2012. And by 2014, we had an international product on the market that's called ION. The brand is Intelligence of Nature, and the acronym is ION. But ION has been, the foundation of our studies in my laboratory since 2012. And what we have shown again and again is that the human body does not nourish itself. Nature nourishes the human body through all of these edges. And so the more microbiome present, the more carbon snowflakes it makes, these little carbon molecules that carry nutrients and carry information. And so what we uncovered unintentionally was the mechanism by which nature communicates through a mycelial network under the farm field or a human gut and the nervous system itself. It's communicating by moving information through these redox chemistry, these basically liquid circuit boards that exist in any liquid state. And as we mentioned at the very big top of the podcast, all living systems are aquatic. They have to use water. And so that water utilizes these carbon molecules as a method for moving electrons in a very coherent way. So this is the fiber optic network at the liquid state of a human body. So that's the only supplement I take on any sort of regularity. 3 times a day, it's a little shot glass of liquid extract.
You
From
don't
these
take magnesium and stuff like that? Like, you don't take
I'll take
magnesium?
magnesium if I travel hard and I know that I just punish my body. But what happens when you get these carbon molecules in there is you can 3,000-fold increase the nutrients from your food. We can get magnesium maybe from
Potentiates the source.
it potentiates the source, and so you don't need to megadose any of these things. I can find myself in situations in international travel where I'm on flights for 30 hours and 4 days. The body at that state is so dewired that it can be helpful to hold the gut in a higher electrical state. And that's what magnesium can help with, is increase the electrical charge across the gut membrane. And so there's moments where we might find these high dose nutrients to be supportive because we've stressed the body so hard. But when you have the soil nutrient delivery system available, then your food has become the medicine again, which is always was intended to be. But when we started into this antibiotic era, we wiped out the gut microbiome through penicillin, herbicides, pesticides, plastics, 300 different chemicals in the daily experience of a human today, all of which undermine biosis, or the biologic interconnectedness of life. And so this antibiotic century has brought us to our knees biologically, the chronic diseases, infertility, extinction. We eliminated our edges at the cellular level through the antibiotic era. And so the soil extracts that we've been bringing to market for all these years are basically that rebuilding up the foundation of your relationship to the food. And if you're drinking this, is why we take it 3 times a day, because you want a little bit of that going down with your food each time you eat. You want half an ounce of that going down with it, so that the nutrients in that food become your resource again. Because when your microbiome is deficient, the food moves through the system without bioavailability of its nutrients. And so we're starving in the face of nutrient overload because we can't move the nutrients from the gut into the liver, into the vascular system, into the cell, into the mitochondria, and liberate the light energy. And so we've become lonely, or isolated from our food system because of our lack of interface through the microbiome and its deficiencies through this antibiotic era. And so that's why, once we get soil systems rebuilt, there's no magnesium supplements, there's no vitamin D supplements. Everything goes out the window as soon as you are reintegrated into nature.
Bring us back, if you will. There's that moment, all of these edges, you've been led into this particular moment in time where there's a bit of firewood gets lodged, and then you're actually driving somewhere and then you blip out. Can you bring us into what actually happened there? So you led into how much earlier in the podcast has been building up your nervous system, life comes to this moment. What happens in the actual moment? Because it's just another day for you, another day in the life of Zach.
Yeah, it was February 10th of 2010. February 10th, we had a huge snowstorm in Virginia, which is extremely unusual. If we get half an inch of snow ice, it shuts down the state, and our city goes to a standstill for a day or two. We got somewhere around 16 inches in like 6 hours, and so it just shut down the entire region with this huge snowstorm. And it was forecast that there was going to be a big storm. So I'd borrowed my brother's old 1990s Toyota 4Runner, and I grew up in Colorado where 20-inch snows were normal, and driving through snow was a daily experience and not a stressor. And I knew I was going to be one of the doctors that would get to the hospital that morning because of the storm. So I got up early in the dark and chopped a bunch of firewood to heat my log home that I had built during my residency. I built a log home out there, and we were living mostly off of a wood burning stove at that point. So I chopped a bunch of wood, make sure the family had enough of that, and slipped and fell on the way up. And a piece of firewood caught me between the ribs on my left side and separated my ribs, which basically creates a bunch of micro tears in the muscles between the ribs. So just a lot of visceral chest pain was happening, and I was annoyed and frustrated and in pain. And so I just, frustratingly dumped a bunch of firewood in the house and went down, got one more load and took it up, and then was running late. So I brushed off the car in a cursory fashion and jumped in and started driving to the hospital. And I've got about a 9-mile drive through the countryside, these little 1-lane roads, and then out to the highway. And got to the highway, it was plowed. And so I called my wife. It's like, all is good. I was cruising along at 55 miles an hour on this completely plowed highway, not a single vehicle anywhere in sight because nobody drives in Virginia with snow. And so I'm all alone on this highway, and I'm on the phone when I suddenly blink out of this reality. I guess is how it felt. And suddenly I'm a moment later, it was like no time passed, and I'm holding on to the same steering wheel, and feel like I just maybe came out of a dream or came out of something, came into this different space. And there was no signs of any highways. There was no signs of human existence, but I was in this deep nature setting that I didn't recognize at all. And I was in a river. And so my vehicle was submerged up to the doors in the middle of a river. And there was just bright light everywhere. And that bright light happened to be these rays of sunshine that were coming back down and into this little valley and hitting the trees that were covered in 20 inches of snow. And so it was like blindingly white bright. And I'm in this state, and my body's in an incredible state of peace and rested. I hadn't been rested in decades, and I felt this deep sense of rest. And so I was working all these ICUs, working around death and dying all the time. And so part of my brain just immediately switched to this realization that I must have died. Like, I was in one reality, and then I died, and now
you're looking at the light.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the light. And the only disappointing thing was that there was all this snow as I started to realize, and I was like, that's what I didn't picture. An eternity of shoveling snow sounds like a lot. So
it's cold here. It's cold. Someone change the thermostat in heaven, please.
I was ready for a warmer climate. I guess I packed wrong for heaven. But it was an interesting kind of time when, again, you have a neurologic system that's struggling to tell a story that would make sense of a situation that has no explanation.
Completely disoriented.
Long story short, I ended up climbing out onto the roof of the vehicle in the middle of this river, and there's this tree branch that seemed perfectly prepared to be my ladder back down to land. So I climbed onto this big tree branch and was drenched. I was no coat on, and I had my slacks and dress shoes and hospital shirt on, and I was headed for work and get over to the side of the river. And I had been a Boy Scout growing up in the Colorado mountains. And at this point, like, my survival skills are like starting to try to resurrect themselves. I'm like, I'm gonna need fire. I wonder if there's food nearby. Like, I don't know what universe I'm in. I don't know what world I'm in, but I was on Highway 29, and now I'm in the wilderness. But I knew I needed to get high enough that I could kind of get a bearing. So I started scrambling up this deep, steep embankment, trying to get higher land, and suddenly come up over this crest of this embankment, and there's Highway 29. And I suddenly realized, holy cow, I wonder if I'm not dead. Like, maybe this is still, maybe somehow I got from the highway to the river. I have no memory of any of that. I feel good. I couldn't put it together again. And as I'm struggling for this, I suddenly realized that there's a man standing in front of me, about 10 feet in front of me, in the middle of the highway, no cars anywhere. And this man is a state trooper, and he's got the state trooper hat on and the perfect mustache and the square shoulders, square jaw, like perfectly cast by the.
Just
by
so
the
we know, oh no, Zach Bush has a guide that looks like a state trooper. Zach Bush's spirit guides are just a state trooper.
That's exactly what was my conclusion. Like, I mean, for all of my earnestness, I was like, obviously this is St. Peter at the gates of heaven. Obviously, I'm
You're a very colonial man, Dr. Bush.
Obviously, he would be waiting for me, and as a state trooper, he's going to make the decision. Like he's going to be the traffic cop at the gates of heaven here. So, at that moment, he raised his right hand at me, kind of in a Moses-like gesture or something, and said, "Son, how did you get here?" So now I think I'm in my resume to get into heaven, and I go into this
Stop
spiel.
talking.
And so I'm like,
Sorry.
well, yeah, I volunteered in orphanages in Mexico, and then I birthed babies in the Philippines, and then I became a doctor, and I'm a great dad, and I'm taking all of the ballet lessons with my daughter so that I can have the daddy-dada relationship, and I'm doing reading tutoring over here on the side. I take my children to church every weekend. Like I am just laying it on because this is the resume I've been building. I mean, this is literally. I'm going to finally ace my first test, and this is what I've been waiting for.
All moments led to this moment.
But unfortunately, every single damn thing I said, this guy seemed to get more concerned, not celebrating. I was like, how is he not celebrating it? Like I am literally the embodiment. I'm the personification of St. Peter's. Like
The better you're making yourself out to be, the worse it's getting.
and he just looks more and more concerned. And he keeps looking down at my chest, which I feel like he's like x-ray visioning my heart. And I'm just like, good God, like, what does he see in my heart?
Oh no, turns out I am an...
What I would find out later is he was not looking at my heart. He was looking at my UVA doctor's badge, trying to reconcile the fact that this guy looks intelligent, looks well-dressed at 6:30 in the morning. He doesn't seem drunk. I don't think he's on drugs. He looks like he's a doctor at UVA, but he is clearly altered. And so he's trying to like...
He's coherent, but not to the plane that I'm on.
And so finally, he raises his hand again, and I at this point I'm getting really afraid that I've failed my test, and now I'm just like freezing cold, frustrated, soaking wet. And he says, "Son, how did you physically get here?" And I just lost my patience, and I start cussing this state trooper out like not like I've never said to anybody, but I was just so beyond any of my neurologic system's coping mechanism. And so I just lost my cool, and I was like, how the hell did you get here? Like, you're in the middle of nowhere. Are you even real? I was just going off on him, like, and to his credit, he like took it in for a few seconds, then burst out laughing, and he's like, I can see how from your perspective this is also strange, but let me explain my situation, then I'm going to have you explain your situation. And so, long story short, I had passed out on the highway from this left chest pain from these separated ribs when the car heated up. And so suddenly my nervous system, it's called a vasovagal experience, but we started and ended with the nervous system here, but my nervous system's suddenly relaxed in the warmth of the vehicle and sense of like, okay, I'm going to get to the hospital, okay, and my adrenaline dropped, my blood vessel tree dilated with my relaxation, and I passed out immediately from a lack of blood flow to my head. And so I had a vasovagal syncope event and passed out at 60 miles an hour on the highway. And what he had pieced together was that my vehicle had actually left the highway airborne about a quarter mile back, and that snow had been plowed over all the guardrails, and it turned into a ski jump basically. And so I passed out, and the vehicle drifted off the road, jumped off this 6-foot, ski jump of frozen ice, and
Bro,
went
you're lucky to
airborne
be
for about
alive.
25 meters and landed on the side of the steep bank. Drove for about 200 meters around the curve of a highway, chasing above all of this tree line. Sudden break in the trees, the vehicle took a 90-degree turn, went down into the river without touching anything. And so in the end, they lifted that vehicle out by tow trucks on both sides of the river. It's suspended by its back bumper 50 meters in the air. Ultimately, it was the most dramatic car rescue ever. And they dropped that thing onto its front bumper on Highway 29. The state trooper pushed on the roof. It kind of tipped down onto its wheels. I got out of the state trooper's car where I'd been trying to warm up, got in the vehicle, started up, and drove to the hospital, worked 10-hour day. And that was the turning point in my life. Like, you can literally map everything that now has happened to me since that moment 16 years ago, all maps back to that moment. And there was a rearrangement of my reality that I could not get back to my previous state of being, and it's because my neurologic system came online in a way that I had not experienced as an adult before. I was fully in a space where I thought I was dead, and so nothing. I could play no role or join any abstract system, and so for those few minutes, I became fully human. I had let go of all other priorities, I was just had turned into a wild animal in a wilderness on maybe some parallel universe that needed to sense enough to save itself or to get oriented to find its way to heaven, whatever it was. But in those few minutes of remembering what it feels like to have no abstract frameworks, to be a living being and to feel everything, that was my rebirth. And I hope that everybody gets a moment like that where you are taken out of your reality completely long enough to remember what it feels like to have so many edges and to be entangled with an identity that's been here from the beginning of time and has this precious moment in which in a finite body you can feel everything. Because in the infinite state, you have so many edges you can't feel. You're just connected to everything. You have no context. You have no framework. And then suddenly you're finite and gravity is affecting you and your feet are on an earth and that earth is beautiful and you're endowed with a nervous system that can see that beauty. This is your moment. You've been waiting for this moment maybe for eons. This is your moment. Feel everything. Lose the judgment on what you're feeling and just feel it and then ask to feel more. Is it going to be starting at pain? Probably. If you let yourself feel your reality right now, you're going to have to accept the pain. And that might feel like heartbreak. It might feel like literal physical pain. You're going to have to start there and then follow the pain into the bliss on the other side. You hold a field, and that field feels everything: heartbreak, peace, joy, unconditional love, fear, guilt, shame, all at once. Embody the field. Become more human than you've ever become. And you're going to start to build a new reality around you.
Numb hurts in its own way. Dr. Zach Bush, Zach, Brother Bear. The major disappointment in this podcast is that it comes to an end. Thank you so much. Where does one begin to thank you for today's conversation? Ultimately, what I would like to say is, yes, thank you for your time and energy you're present today, all about the moment, as we've been discussing. But also today's conversation stands on the shoulders of not just your life's work, but your life. Thank you so much for sharing yourself so openly, so abundantly with us here today, with so much incredible insight as well. Deeply grateful for your work in the world, but also, brother, really, really grateful for you. Thank you so much. You, just as easily as you described, might have not been here. Grateful that you're here and doing this with us. Thank you so much for you.
Honored to be with you, Amar. Thank you for all of you who have tuned in and tangled with this conversation. And I hope that you felt something today that reminds me and you of how beautiful it is to be alive.
Yo, inspired soul human being, you made it through to the end of another really incredible, my goodness, Dr. Zach Bush, what an absolute legend. Thank you so much for making it all the way through to the end of another really incredible episode. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. The depths of your awareness and how you're tuning in, and yeah, my hat goes off. Thank you so much for being part of it. You listened all the way to the end. Look at you. Inspired evolutionary. Love you. Touch wood. Okay, so back to business. So I want to take a moment to thank all of you. Yes, all of you that are subscribed to the podcast, because everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription. It's completely free to this channel. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, like I said, it's completely free. Please do take a moment. Yeah, it really helps power the movement. Everything we're doing around here, the size of the platform is what attracts these guests onto the podcast for us to be able to have these conversations. If you are finding these valuable, please hit subscribe and hit that bell notification icon, and you'll be the first to know when episodes come out as well. And also, just to let you know, as you do that, it'll curate other content pieces that are adjacent to our content pieces, and your feed will start to look more spiritual if you feel that call. All right. Now, the other thing, I just want to remind you here at the Inspired Evolution, I'm super biased. We have the Inspired Evolution Community Circle. It's our community experience here at the Circle. It's on a platform called Circle. And it's called The Circle because the center's empty. This is not about me. Yeah, I'm just here by your side. Once a month, guests come on to answer incredible questions from you. You guys turn into the podcasters, right? Ask the questions directly of the guest yourself. And man, does the community go deep. Some really interesting, like-minded, like-hearted people in this space. And you can come meet us all on the inside. Yeah, join the Inspired Evolution Community Circle. If you're loving this content, the intention of the community is to turn it into connection. Yeah, trying to meet people you might not know. There might be someone that's just a couple of doors down from you that's in the community, and you might think you're on your own, living this aware life on your own, but also people don't really fully understand you. So if you feel the call, Inspired Evolution Community Circle, inspiredevolution.com/circle. I would love to welcome you on the inside. There's astrological updates, even just the community. Man, the community sharings are so rich. Yeah, to just feel that we're all going through similar things at similar times, it's the return to the fireside. If you are looking for community, we're in the age of Aquarius. It doesn't care about digital screens. This might be what you're looking for at this time. Yeah, just inviting you to check it out. And that's me being a bit standoffish because really, we'd love to welcome you home on the inside. Okay, so now on screen, if you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Zach Bush, him and Richard Rudd have been doing a lot of conversations online at festivals together recently as well. You might want to check some of those out. We have a conversation with Richard Rudd here for you to check out about this particular moment in time, the prophecies that we're living through and how he had foreseen it earlier than this time. So you can click on that and I'll see you over there.